live.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Tess Monty with News on 6. We're so excited to have you here with us today. A bunch of hunters on this virtual event. We're here to swap stories, share a little advice and tips we've learned along the way. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We're also going to be answering your questions, so be sure to leave them in the comments below, and we'll get to those kind of throughout this event and then again at the end. We're going to start off with introductions. Again, I'm Tess Monty. I'm a News on 6 anchor and reporter for 6 in the morning, and I'm going to turn it over now to Craig Day.
Hey, everybody. I don't know if you're going to get much advice from me on hunting. I just know I like to do it, but I'm not very good at it. But I anchor the 5, 6, and 10 at News on 6. I've been there almost 19 years, so it's been a while, but I'm excited that you're joining us for this special, and hope you enjoy it. I love to get outside and get in the outdoors, especially spend some family time with my sons and some other relatives, and I hope you get a chance to do that as well. Tess?
All right, and we got Reagan Ledbetter with us. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Reagan. I'm a reporter here at Channel 6. I focus on pretty much only crime. So the deer woods are my chance to get away from that and kind of escape and have some fun, focus on something awesome. I'm looking forward to having this conversation. I actually went on an out-of-state trip this year to Wyoming, and I'm looking forward to telling you guys about that trip and things we learned and things we got to see and how much different it was to whitetail hunting in Oklahoma, which I'm completely new to because I'm from the Northwest and we don't really have whitetails up there. So this is a whole new ball game for me, but I'm excited to talk a little bit about it.
I know you've had a pretty exciting season, so I'm looking forward to hearing from you. And then Tanner Messer, you don't see his face very often, you just hear his voice. Hey, Tanner.
Yes. Hey, Tess. So I am on Big Country 99.5 in the afternoons from 3 to 7. Although if you've been listening this past week, I've been filling in for Hoot Owl in the mornings. And then also if you're into newer country music, I'm on 98.5 KVOO in the evenings from 7 to midnight. But I'll be the first to admit, too, I've only been deer hunting a handful of times. I'm a big duck hunter. Love duck hunting. That is some of the most fun I have ever had. So I'm looking forward to this and hopefully going to learn some from deer hunting from y'all.
Yeah, so that'll be fun to have a little variety here with deer hunting, duck hunting. Maybe we'll even get into turkey and hogs as well. We all have varying degrees, of course, of experience with hunting. I've been hunting now for about 8 years, just about as long as I've been with News on 6. So we're going to start off kind of like with how we got started, who introduced us. And Craig, why don't you kick it off and let us know how you got started in the outdoors? Because you haven't been doing it terribly long, I don't suppose.
Well, I grew up hunting a little bit when I was a kid. My granddad's farm, I'd tag along and just kind of observe more than anything. And then I'd rabbit hunt and stuff when I was younger. But I married into a deer hunting family. I'd never been deer hunting before. And of course, I've been married 28 years. So I guess I've been hunting 28 years. It took about 5 years before I even saw a deer in the woods, So I was like, man, I don't understand the fun of this. You go sit in the cold and your back hurts and you don't see anything. That's great. But that's why they call it hunting, right? So my first experience out in the deer camp, it was kind of funny, not at the time, but it's funny now. There's a fence post that was stuck in the mud and in the ice, and it was cold, and I pulled it out and I gashed myself in the face with it. Big old cut on my face. And my brother-in-law wanted to give me stitches at the deer camp. And I thought, oh, my gosh, are you serious? I'm at the deer camp at this old shack? And I do not want stitches at the deer camp. I'm going to get some kind of ptomaine or infection or something like that. Thankfully, my father-in-law talked him out of it. But anyway, that was my first experience with deer hunting, was going out there and like almost getting stitches in the face, which as a news anchor, you're like, oh, man, I don't want a big old deer camp scar on my face.
That's your moneymaker.
Oh, yeah, right. But maybe that's hindered me in my career. No, I'm kidding. But that was my first experience. But, it's all about getting together with family and friends and just laughing and playing cards. And if you see a deer, to me, that's a bonus. And so I've learned a little bit over the years. I'm still not that great of a hunter, but I still would go just about every single year and get out and get outside and as Tanner said, and Reagan said, just kind of get outside and enjoy being outside.
Well, I always love hearing stories. And when you told me the other day that you started hunting in your mid-20s, I was thinking that was just a few years ago.
Oh, well, you're so sweet. What a wonderful host for this event. Yes, you just became my favorite person on earth.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Reagan, you got work to do, man. You're still kind of down there because you called me old earlier. But.
I know. I'm sorry.
Who introduced you, Reagan, to hunting?
It was actually my dad and my dad's dad, my grandpa. I remember it vividly, those early mornings back home in Washington State. Our kind of hunting was so different than what I'm doing down here now. I never hunted in a tree stand until probably 4 years ago. Up there, it's blacktail on the west side, which is in the thick kind of rainforest country, clear cuts. And on the east side, it was mule deer, so it was more spot and stock, and then elk hunting as well. But I remember waking up early in the mornings, hopping in my grandpa's old 1970s red Ford pickup truck, and we'd head out, and my dad and grandpa, they would bow hunt. And I remember my dad bought me when I was younger, he bought me not a toy bow, but it had like a 10-pound pole. And I would carry that with me while they were hunting. And I never forget, one time my dad and I were hunting, and we were coming up over this little hill, and I was carrying my bow, and it was getting too heavy for me. So I had my dad carry it for me. And we get over this little hill, and he looks up, and there's a big old 4x4 buck mule deer at about 40 yards from where we were at. And he had my bow in his hand, and he was trying to get my attention to take the bow away. And I didn't know what he was saying. And I was probably 8 years old, and it scared the deer away. And that was the last time I carried a little toy bow in the woods with my dad. But we had a lot of fun. We went on a lot of camping trips, a lot of, us three, we'd head out to Eastern Washington and camp in the freezing cold weather and maybe see a few deer, but it was just fun listening to their stories of their hunting trips growing up. And it kind of got me in love with hunting. And now I'm kind of hunting on my own down here in Oklahoma.
Tanner, how'd you get your start?
Well, I did not really grow up hunting. I grew up fishing. And my grandpa, who on my mom's dad, I was super close with him, and he would always take me fishing and everything. And he hunted as well. He had bird dogs my whole life. And he passed away 4 years ago. And when he passed away, I got some of his guns. And so a buddy of mine from church, his name is Nathan, he said, "Hey, I know you've got those guns. Would you want me to take you and show you how to hunt?" And so he took me duck hunting one time, and the rest is history. I've been hooked ever since. And like I say, I love it. I remember the first time we went duck hunting. I got to experience, shooting ad ducks and everything, but obviously being a first time, I didn't get any. But I remember when we were walking out, there was also these people that were dragging a deer out. And we got to talking to them, and I just loved the sense of community that you get while you're hunting. We were sharing stories with them and everything. And I absolutely loved it. And I knew I love doing this, and I've been hooked ever since.
And so you're hunting with your grandpa's guns.
Correct. Yes. And so the first time, it took me several trips before I actually got my first duck, obviously, but that made it that much more special was the fact that I got it with one of his guns. It was a Remington 1100. I still got it. I don't use it as much because now that I've got that first duck, it means a lot more to me. And I really don't like taking it out now and risking, messing it up or anything. So.
That's really funny. I didn't grow up with a hunting family either. And it's so special to have those items like that. My brothers don't hunt. My mom doesn't hunt. It was a single mom or a single parent situation. But when my grandpa died, he had an old shotgun. And when my dad was trying to figure out who that gun was going to go to, he said, "Okay, so which one of you kids would like it?" And my brother was like, "I'd kind of like it." And he was like, "But would you ever use it?" And he was like, "Give it to Tess," because my brothers don't hunt. And so I dove hunt with an old Winchester Model 12. So it's pretty special to get to do that.
Hey, Tess, just to bring on that subject, same thing with me. I've got 3 of my granddad's guns and, one of my dad's guns. And there's something about when they're handed down to you. And I mean, a couple of these are 100-year-old shotguns, that I still use. Yeah. And it's something about when that loved one held it and they used it, and now you have it, and it's something I'll pass those guns down to my sons who both love to hunt,
Well,
and so there's something special about that connection.
And it really makes me wish I knew more about what my grandpa used it for. He was a farmer. He wasn't a hunter. So, I'm not really sure if it was to, he had it in there if he saw a coyote out in the wheat field or whatever it might have been. But maybe you'll want to share those stories with your kids so they can pass it on and they'll know what, kind of the history behind that. It's
Absolutely.
funny how you have those connections.
And something that Tanner brought up too is that whole sense of community when you're out there, when he ran into those deer hunters. That's now you can e-check, obviously, the deer that you harvest. But, back in the day, you went to town and you weighed them in, at a gas station or a convenience store or something. And then there'd be about 10 guys around the backs of pickup truck beds. And they're all visiting. You don't know any of them, but you have that sense of community and that bond there. And you get to visit them with people and get to meet people. And they tell their stories and you swap stories. And I tell stories about the deer that I missed shots on, and while everybody else is checking in their deer. And it's right, Tanner, you're right. I mean, that whole sense of community is just one of the wonderful things I think about hunting in the outdoors.
Absolutely. It's not really like a competition between anybody out there. I mean, obviously, you may have your eye on a big buck or whatever that somebody else has. But at the same time, I'm so happy to see somebody else having success. And I loved when we ran into those people on my first trip. It was a guy and his sister. And his sister was the one who got the deer, and that was her first deer. And so I love getting to hear about her excitement and everything. And you're absolutely right. It's just so much about community.
Tess, I'm going to turn the tables on you.
Okay.
I want to ask you how you got your start in hunting.
Well, it's weird that it goes back to a noodling story.
Oh, man.
I went on that noodling story 8 years ago with Dick and Lacey. And through that story, a few weeks later, I met my husband on a noodling trip. And he was our guide for the day. And we've been together ever since. So more than 8 years now. And my husband's a wildlife biologist. We'll get to meet him in a little bit because he's just a big part of my story. And a lot of viewers kind of know him just through social media. But he's a big hunter. And so a couple months after we went noodling, deer season came along. And I said, I want to try hunting too. I've always been interested. I just didn't know how to get started. And he introduced me. And my first hunt, that was it. I was hooked. He hung up a tree stand for me. We didn't have a 2-man ladder stand at the time. And so he hung up a climbing or a hang-on stand for me and one for him. And we sat next to each other every hunt. And I was able to harvest a little buck. And it was, oh my goodness, it was such a proud moment and such an exciting thing to learn about how to hunt. And it's just really been fun ever since.
I love it. It was love at first bite with the noodling with a catfish, right?
I like to tell people that we have a little bit of a redneck love story. And that's perfectly fine with me.
Hey, Tess, isn't that how we proposed too in the deer stand?
Oh, gosh, yeah. I guess when people ask me, what's your best hunting story? And I think of ones where we've been out actually and harvested a deer. But I suppose probably the absolute best deer hunting story is when he proposed. And he did it through a selfie because I take selfies in the tree stand and it drives him crazy, because you don't want to spook a deer, but I like to get a picture of us. And so when I was snapping a picture, he pulled out the ring and I could see it behind me and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I turned around and there was the ring.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Hey, Reagan, do you have a good first deer hunt story?
I'm trying to think.
Or not necessarily deer, just your first time hunting. Was it the story with your dad and the little bow?
That's probably the first one. But honestly, one of my favorite deer hunting stories, though, was probably my first legit whitetail hunting was when I shot my buck last year. Because back home, the seasons are different. So in Oklahoma, you can hunt 3.5 months through the rut and get to see, bucks chasing does and stuff. Back home, if you want to hunt November, you have to get specially drawn. It's really hard to do. And so I never really got to see the rut in full swing. Well, last year when I shot my buck, I got to see the rut in just full swing, bucks chasing does all over the place, grunting, going crazy. And so that was almost cooler to watch than it was actually shooting the buck that I got. It was just cool to see, these deer out running around and truly seeing the rut out there.
Yeah, they get a little crazy this time of year. You got to be careful
Yeah,
when
it's
you're on the
insane.
roads and even in the stand. But so we're all after a deer. It may be a trophy buck. It may be just a really nice doe. And sometimes things go as planned, and sometimes they don't. Craig Day. It's so funny. Craig Day, I'll come into the newsroom. We don't get to see each other near as much as we used to, but he'd call me over to his desk and he'd have a story. And it always ended with me like laughing till I'm almost crying because he's just shaking his head because he just has had some interesting moments. So you've got so many good stories to tell. I don't know if you just want to pluck a few of them out.
I'll tell you a story that happened just like 2 weeks ago. A friend of mine bought some land in Ada down in Pontotoc County and put it in a tiny house. It's a beautiful home, beautiful tiny house. It's like 400 or 500 square feet, but just absolutely beautiful. And they've moved there. So I was going to hunt their blind that they had on their land. And so we ate supper and we're visiting. And I go sleep upstairs in the loft bedroom, which the ceiling is about 4 feet tall in the loft. So I'm a fairly big guy.
You're healthy.
I'm overweight. Let's just put it that way. So anyway, so the ceiling is this tall, right? And so I set my alarm to get up well before sunrise. But when my alarm goes off, I look outside and the sun's up. I mean, it's coming up fast. And I'm like, oh my gosh, jump up, goes on. And of course I hit my head. And then I get dressed to just throw one camo shirt on, pair of tennis shoes. That's all I had time to find. I'm trying not to wake them up. And I forgot a belt. So I've lost a little bit of weight. And so I'm trying to get to the blind and I've got my bow and I'm stalking along and trying to be quiet. My pants fall down right in the middle of the woods. I forgot my belt. And so I'm trying to gracefully, as Ben, pull your pants up and walk another 20 yards, pants fall down again. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm just like praying they don't have game cameras set up right around that particular area. That just happened last week, a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. The first time I ever bow hunted, he gave me a compound bow. I never even used it, didn't know how to use it, never practiced with it, never pulled it back before, nothing. And I missed the same deer 4 times.
That's nice.
Same daggum deer. He never saw me. And the first time I flew way over his head, I find the arrow 2 weeks later in a tree trunk. Then the next one, I don't know what happened to it. The third one, I pull it back about that far and accidentally hit the trigger release. And so it just kind of, And then the fourth one, I was so mad, I really didn't even aim. I just tried to do it gangster style. And it missed. Same deer, 4 shots. That's all I used a compound bow. It was too frustrating. But
hey, Craig, didn't you see it? Craig, didn't you see a deer that morning that your pants fell down?
No. Well, I heard one. I heard one blowing that morning. So I'm sure, me trying to pick up my britches and get dressed, it probably scared it off because it started blowing and going and I couldn't see her, but she took off. So, yeah, if I was in position and in the blind and ready to go with a belt, I probably would have brought a deer home that day. Where to stop, Tess? I got a million embarrassing stories.
It's just exciting. You get up there and you're excited and you see a deer, and there's nothing like being so close to a wild animal and you've worked hard for the season. And then that moment comes, you just get so excited. I mean, I've had a few times where I just completely forget to take the safety off. And so I go to pull. And then by the time that happens, my moment's over. And
typically, usually I remain pretty calm. It's just weird things happen to me, and so I don't. I'm not one of these guys that is gonna. I don't think I'll have a heart attack if I see a big buck. I kind of keep it even keel. But it's just I see them in the weirdest places. Like it'll be the middle of the day and I'm packing up my sleeping bag and my pickup, and a huge buck will come out within shooting distance, and my gun is leaning up against a tree like 30 yards away, and I have a sleeping bag and pillow in my hand. I'm like, I don't think I'm going to harvest one with a pillow fight,
Lou asked you a question, wants to know if you've ever gotten an elk.
No, I haven't done that kind of big game hunting. I haven't, and I honestly, with our work schedules, how it goes. I mean, I don't get to hunt as often as I'd like. So where we hunt is 2.5 hours away. So my days are somewhat limited. So I haven't really had the time off to go do a big hunt like that. And I got 4 kids, I mean, those elk hunts are pretty, and plus I just like hanging out with my sons and my father-in-law, and we got, nephews and their kids now, and cousins, and cousins, friends, and all the guys that come together and their kids. There are 4 generations that are going down there. So I haven't done any of the excursions, say out of state or those big game hunts. Just pretty much stay as close to camp as possible and just enjoy everybody's company for the most part.
Tanner, you shared a little bit about your first hunt. Do you have any other memorable hunts that you want to share about?
Yes. So I've got 2 of those stories where it didn't really go as planned. The first one was I was squirrel hunting with my cousin, and we were on the public land up between Bartlesville and Pawhuska. I think it's the Osage Hills WMA. I think that's what it's called. And I've said on the radio, all my friends and family know that I am terrified of snakes. I absolutely hate snakes, which fortunately duck hunting and this time of year you don't have to deal with snakes. But we were squirrel hunting. It was June or July, and it's really rocky up there too. So prime territory for snakes. So we're going through the woods. My cousin's in front of me, and he's got 2 dogs that are just, running all around looking for squirrels, looking to tree them. And cousin's in front of me. I'm right behind him, following him step by step. And I look down at just the right time, and my boot is right next to a snake coiled up. And so I was terrified already, and I didn't care what kind of snake it was. I just wanted to get away from it as quickly as possible. And as soon as I started to jump away from it, it started to rattle. So I knew it was a rattlesnake then. So fortunately, I got away from it, had no mishaps there. And I don't know how he didn't step on it, I didn't step on it, and the dogs didn't step on it either. So that was one thing. Luckily, snake is no longer alive. And then the other time was while we were duck hunting. This was my first year duck hunting. And so this was while I was still kind of learning the ropes of it. And it was, we looked at the forecast, and it was going to be one of those days where it was rainy and kind of 32, 33-ish degrees. So we didn't know if it was going to be ice, snow, rain, whatever. And so we got out there. It was before dark, and it was rain at that point. And we were on Copan Lake, and the lake was kind of, it was about the normal level. And so we were able to cross to this one place where we had been wanting to go hunt. And so we set our stuff down, and as the sun started to come up, it turned into snow. And so I thought, oh, this is great. It's really pretty out here. And so I'm walking out in probably a foot of water in my waders, and my foot gets caught on a limb that's underwater. I don't see, and I go down. And fortunately, the water didn't get in my waders or anything. I hear that makes the trip miserable. I've never had that happen, knock on wood. But still, I had to catch myself, and also my gun got submerged underwater. So the hunting trip was pretty much done for me at that point. And also with the snow coming in, everything just kept getting wet. So I could not properly dry off. And it was 32 degrees. That's the coldest I've ever been. And I've always said since that moment that if I can learn one valuable lesson from duck hunting, it's how to dress warm. I never, ever get cold again since that point, because that's the coldest I have ever been.
Those are the kind of stories you don't want to share with people who are kind of thinking about hunting, but not quite sure about it. On the fence. Just keep that one for a later date.
Exactly. Yes.
Oh, so Reagan, you've had a super cool season. I know you've been out to Western Oklahoma, but the biggest trip was out to Wyoming, right?
It was
antelope
awesome.
Hunting.
It was amazing. It's, Yeah, me and some of my best friends, we went out to Wyoming this year back in October. So my grandparents, the one I was talking about earlier, they retired to Wyoming, and they built a house, beautiful shop, gorgeous view. They're living the retirement life. They're loving it. So we went up to stayed at their house and antelope hunted on public land for the first week of October. And we planned this trip back in May, put in for the draw. We all three got drawn, went up there. And let me tell you, it's the most unique hunting because like we're used to waking up at 4 a.m, climbing to a tree stand, sitting till 10 or 11 or all day, and just sitting and waiting. Well, antelope are out all day. So you can hunt you can drive out there at 8 a.m. as it's already light out and hunt all day. And they're just out in the fields grazing or whatever. And so the first day, we're running into other hunters and it's because it's public land and we use this, the app called Onyx because all the public land is like checkerboarded across all this country. And so you have to know where you're at all times. So that was the biggest challenge, was trying to figure out, okay, is this public? Is this private? Because there's so much private land and there's not as much public. And so trying to figure out where you're at and not shoot an antelope on someone's property. So the first day we were driving all over the place. We hunted for 12 hours. I think I missed 2. It was a rough day and we were discouraged. We're like, okay, what's going on? Like this antelope hunting is supposed to be a lot easier. Then the next day we ended up getting 2. I shot one across a canyon at like 300 yards. Then my other buddy, Jim, he shot one on the run, actually. We stalked it. And so we got 2 that day. And then the next morning we went out and my other buddy who hadn't hunted the whole trip, he'd been filming our hunts the whole trip. His first 10 minutes of the morning, we spot one, stalk it, and we got it. So it was an amazing trip. It was fun to go up there. It was a long truck ride, 16 hours, but it was a lot of good family time, coming back to the house every day and hanging out with my grandparents' friends, and just a very unique trip. And we definitely got hooked to an out-of-state hunting. So we're going to start going every single year from now on and just have 1 week a year that we go on an out-of-state trip.
Yeah, that's your new tradition. I loved the picture that you had out in the field with your granddad. I just thought that was so special that you got to share that moment with him, that he was there with you.
It was really cool how excited he was because, I've hunted with him since growing up, my life. Well, when I went to college down here at OU, we hadn't hunted together in several years. And when I called him and I said, hey, we want to come up and hunt antelope, he was thrilled. He was making calls and telling all of his buddies. And he was so excited. And when we were up there, I was like, are you going to come hunting with us? And he goes, yeah, I'll probably come a day with you guys. I don't want to intrude on your hunt. Well, he ended up coming every single day. We went out there all day long, and he just had a blast. I don't even think he brought his gun because, he can hunt whenever, but he just had a blast watching us. And his tradition, he taught us for every time he gets one. So he calls his wife, my grandma, and says, the eagle has landed. That's their phrase when he shoots one out in the field with his buddies. And so he taught us that. So whenever we would shoot one, we'd call her and say, the eagle has landed. And so now, whenever we went muzzleloader hunting back in October out in western Oklahoma, us 3, and as soon as we got one, we looked at each other and said, the eagle has landed. So it's kind of our new little tradition and stuff. But he got drawn for a special whitetail hunt this year in the rut up in Wyoming. And so I'm waiting to see if he gets one. Hopefully he does.
You're waiting to get the text that says the eagle has landed.
Yes. He doesn't know how to text, but he'll call me.
One of the things I think is important to add too is that when we go out and hunt, we're harvesting the meat. And, for my husband and I, that's what we eat year round is the deer, the venison that we've harvested in the fall and winter. So, and Reagan was offering Craig some antelope meat, but not me. So hopefully get to work tomorrow and there's some antelope meat in the freezer. What was
actually cool, one more thing, last weekend we were out in western Oklahoma again, and for our food, we brought our antelope from Wyoming for the weekend. And so we made fried backstrap on Friday night and chili cheese Frito crumbs. And then we had antelope burgers the next night. So it's cool going on hunting trips and using the game that you harvested earlier in the season. So,
Hey, Tess, that's an important thing to point out because we feed our family with this meat. My son's got through college off deer, ramen noodles and deer meat. So I mean, we cook it like crazy. We use a lot of ground meat. Venison meat is healthy. It's really good for you, and using spaghetti and burritos and tacos and chili, and it's important for people to know that yes, we harvest these animals, and it's good for controlling the population, but also we benefit from it, And I know a lot of hunters that donate it to charity, and so there's a lot of people that are fed through wildlife and through hunting in Oklahoma. And then another thing I wanted to point out, it's kind of to touch on what Reagan was talking about with his granddad. Excited that was when he got that. It's exciting when we get a deer, and I'm just using because that's mostly what I do, but it could be anything else. But I'm going to tell you, as a dad of Andrew and Jackson, I'm more excited when they get one. So I was pretty excited when I got my first deer, and then I get excited when I get another good deer. But when they got their first deer, man, I was over the moon excited for them. And so that's part of that hunting tradition. So I'm not surprised that his granddad probably gets more excited about Reagan getting something than him getting something.
he was fired up.
Well, so I've talked a little bit about my husband, and he's on this call as well. We're going to let him jump in here at the end. His name's Matt Machota, which is my legal last name. I took my my maiden name on air. So, Matt, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Well, hey, so do you want to introduce yourself and tell folks like what you do? You're a wildlife biologist with the state, and just your experience.
Sounds like you've done a pretty good job of introducing me. I'm Matt Machota, I'm a wildlife biologist for the state, and I'm Tess Monty's husband.
I can tell who the talker is of this couple. I can tell who the talker is.
Yeah, there's only room for one in each relationship.
We balance each other out pretty well. But we wanted to, don't want to have a conversation about hunting without giving, safety tips and also, hunting tips, just kind of things that we've learned along the way. Any advice that you all would give to hunters starting out? I know for me, I didn't know where to get started. So I was really fortunate to have Matt here to help me. But I always say, reach out to somebody who hunts, and maybe that's a good direction to go. Anybody?
Yeah, Tess, that's the thing. I Matt's the expert, and I'm sure he has a lot of advice. The advice that I would give is, I'm big on safety, and of course, I'm old enough that I did not have to go through hunter safety. And I've been around guns growing up, and my dad taught me safety, and my granddad, the lessons that were passed down to me. But I was old enough not to have to take hunter safety, but my sons had to take it. But I chose to take hunter safety with them because I wanted to show an example about how important safety is. And so, and it doesn't hurt me to, and of course, you go safety thing. It'll talk about gun safety. It'll talk about landowner rights and respect and that kind of thing. But there are a lot of good lessons. So I'm a big safety guy, even though my sons have been hunting for years and they get in a stand. Once we're in the stand, we have to text each other, where are you? I'm in stand at this stand. Before they get down and decide to walk and stalk, I'm getting down, I'm walking the northwest corner of our property, or, something like that, just so we know where we are. And so, and I would especially encourage, even if somebody like me fathered in and doesn't have to take hunter safety, I would encourage everybody to do that, especially if you hunt on public land, because you don't know who's there. You don't know what kind of level or skill level you have. And so, to me, it's just so important. And of course, being in the news business, we're kind of cognizant of those stories we hear about somebody injured or hurt or killed maybe by a firearm while they're out in the deer woods because of an accident. So, I mean, it was taught to me just family at a young age about, don't cross a fence with a load of things like that. But I really would emphasize that people take hunter safety classes. And if you haven't gone for a while, maybe you've already taken it. It doesn't hurt to go back. It's fun. I mean, you're around a bunch of hunters and you swap stories. It's a few hours of your day, really.
Yeah.
One of the other
Matt,
things is,
I was going to have Matt talk a little bit about what kind of safety tips you recommend out in the field. Whether you're on public or private, orange during gun season is a must. Matt, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it is a must. It's legally required. You have to have your Blaze Orange on, and for those requirements, you can look into our hunting regulations and find exactly how much Blaze Orange you need. Craig made some great points. Love to hear that perspective of somebody who didn't have to take hunter's ed, but took it anyway to set an example for his kids. You learn a lot, and it's a lot of stuff that I see folks not doing in the field, like crossing fences with loaded guns or leaning them up against your truck. Things that you think will never be an issue could certainly be an accident that you don't ever want to have happen.
And even if you're a bow hunter during gun season, whether you're on public or private, you still have to have either your Blaze Orange or your Hunter Orange head covering or vest on as well. And I think that there are a lot of people who don't remember that or maybe don't know it. And if you're in the blind, if you're in a hunting blind, you can't get in the blind and shed your orange, right?
Yeah, that's right. You have to have it on at all times. You see everybody on Facebook posting pictures out there with their muzzle in hand or youth deer gun hunting, and they take their orange off as soon as they get sat down, worried about scaring a deer. But that's a crucial part of hunting. You need to have that on for your safety, your kids' safety, for your family's safety. You don't want them to be worried about you because you had an accident because you were just dead set that your deer were going to spook because you had a orange hat on.
Yeah, and I know
silly
deer,
when you put it in perspective.
The deer don't really seem, deer have looked at me straight on from 10 yards away with orange on and they don't see a thing. Reagan, you were going to add something to it as well, to the safety aspect.
Yeah, mine's more on, tips for new hunters. I think one of the most important things is just to know the rules about where you're hunting. For me, like I was talking about an out-of-state hunt, the rules and regulations are completely different in Wyoming or back home in Washington than they may be in Oklahoma. And I'm sure Matt can explain more on this, but I feel like, these rules are put in place for a reason to make the hunting better for everybody, whether that's you can't shoot from the road, whether you have to wear a hat and orange hat and an orange vest while you're out during rifle season instead of just one or the other. You can only shoot one buck with your rifle. Just all these different rules. Nothing can ruin a hunt more than getting caught and basically having your buck taken away or getting a big fine. And people get frustrated about these rules, but they really are in place to make the whole hunting experience better for everybody. And, knowing whether you can use an expandable broadhead or you have to use a fixed blade, whether you can, have a camera on your bow to film your hunt or not. There's just rules in every different state. So just being cautious of that is really important to read your regulations for your state.
And another thing, safety-wise, if you're in a tree stand, a harness. I will not climb into a stand if I do not have my harness on. And that wasn't the way of the world in hunting, even just a few years ago, but now that's a really big thing. Lifelines where you can just take it up with you the whole way. That's one thing that I really spend a lot of time telling people, please put on your harness. I've even gotten Matt to do it as well. And you talked a little bit about public land. That's part of Matt's job, is managing public land. So what would your advice? You've taught me a lot about hunting and how to scout on public land. Do you have any advice for folks, Matt, on how to make that happen, how to hunt public land effectively? Are you guys hearing him?
I think we may have lost him.
Yeah. Matt, why don't you just come in here and you can just jump. He's in the other
That's
room.
convenient.
Come sit next to me if he has
You know,
to.
Reagan makes good points.
So Reagan, are you all doing it? Tanner, are you doing deer gun season?
I'm not. No, I was
tomorrow morning.
I do not. I have not deer hunted in several years. Only one I'm participating in is duck hunting, and I know it opened this past Saturday. I've yet to go. I'm going to go this weekend though.
Hey, look who's joining us here.
Look at that.
What a
That was a
world
quick
we live
to you.
Man,
Yeah.
Matt, Tess lets you come in the living room?
Yeah.
In the living room, man. All right.
This is our fireplace that I've made a nice camo backdrop for this virtual event. So anyway, here's Matt, even though it probably just says my name on the screen.
He's
Hey,
got
what
way
do you
less
have?
of a beard than last hunting season.
Well, I trimmed it just this week. So,
She made you do it.
well, I had an interview I had to go to. So,
What are your public hunting land advice? Our dogs in here. This has just gone to another level here.
like I was trying to say earlier, Reagan made some great points about each different wildlife management area has different regulations based on what the biologists see out there. So make sure and read up on those. You can find those in our hunting regulations, or contact the biologist. That I think they're listed as a hunting contact in our regs. So look them up, give them a shout. They'd be happy to answer any question you had. Same thing, call the game wardens. They're listed there too by county. Give them a shout if you got questions. If you're hunting on private land, you know that the biologist might not be able to answer. Give them a shout. As far as scouting goes,
yeah, like if you want to go out and I want to go hunt public land, but I don't know a lot about hunting, or I've maybe only hunted over a feeder. You can't hunt over feeders on public land. What do you do? What's the best advice?
right? Yeah, it seems to be the kind of the new thing is sitting over a corn pile, and there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But you can't do that on public land; it's illegal. So the things that you need to get out there and look for is a food source. I mean, that's what you're hunting when you're hunting corn or a food plot. You're looking for a food source. So this time of year, a lot of acorns was what you want to be looking for. We do plant food plots on a lot of these public areas. They're good places to hunt, but obviously, they're kind of highly sought after. So somebody might already be hunting it. So then you got to think, where's this deer coming from, or where does he go when he leaves this food plot, or patch of oaks or whatever they're feeding on at the time. So look for bedding areas, look for pinch points, funnels, things like that, and travel corridors. Deer like to be in cover. This time of year they're moving because it's the rut, so they're going to move throughout the day, but they don't want to move through a mowed Bermuda grass field. They're not moving through people's front lawns necessarily at noon. They're going to be in some tall grass or some cover. So look for those kind of pinch points and funnel areas that deer are moving from bedding to food sources during the day.
And Jerry wants to know how many deer you can get a year.
So you can get, if you have a lifetime license, or you buy as many tags as you want, you can get 6. If you choose to hunt the holiday antlerless season, you can get 7.
And that's $2.
$2 up to 5 does if you're doing that holiday antlerless season.
Let's talk a little bit about seasons. Everybody has their favorite season. There's deer, there's duck, there's turkey. Do you all have a favorite? I think we know Tanner's.
Yes. I like duck season, and also, too, like I said just a little bit ago, I like squirrel season, too, because that's something you can do in the summertime as well and get your fix on that.
Craig?
I think I like black powder season or muzzleload season, just because it's a little bit warmer. I'm getting a little older, and the cold, I'm turning it into a sissy. So no, I like I don't know. I like them all. I like rifle season because that's when more of the family and the guys get together. So I love, and again, that's if I see a deer, it's a bonus to me. I'm spending time with my sons, I'm spending time with my father-in-law, I'm spending time with. There's a guy named Jeff, friend named Jeff that hunts, and his son, and my wife's cousin, and my wife's nephew, our nephew, and their kids. That's the beautiful thing about hunting to me. And if you see a deer, okay, that's awesome too.
Or
But
maybe a raccoon.
Well, I had a raccoon try to climb in a stand with me not long ago when I was bow hunting. It was hilarious, but then he climbed up the ladder even. But anyway, rifle season would probably be the best just because there's more people there and I get to see more people from the social, family perspective. But I kind of like muzzleloader season, and I haven't really bow hunted all that much until the last couple of years, I guess. And I love the fact that the bow season is longer because when your hunting time conflicts with your work time, that gives you more opportunities to get out in the woods. This year, especially, I'm certainly taking advantage of that. So that's been fun too. But my sons love to duck hunt. I've gone duck hunting with them a little bit, but it's, as Tanner said earlier, unless you have the right clothes, boy, it can get cold.
That's true.
Reagan, you've done a lot of different kind of hunting, so you have more to choose from.
Growing up, it was definitely elk season. Like the first couple weeks of September, hearing those bugling bulls is like the most impressive thing ever. It just kind of gives you chills. That was my favorite. Now that I live in Oklahoma, it's anything bow season. I love bow hunting. That's year round. I'm shooting my bow. I just love it so much. I love the whole, kind of chess game when you're bow hunting. Haven't done a lot of rifle hunting in Oklahoma. I'm probably going to bring my rifle this weekend and have it. But I'm going to try to get a buck with my bow this weekend. That's going to be the focus. But I just love trying to sneak in these little spots, get close enough, watching your wind, making sure, they can't smell you, and trying to get close enough to get a deer with your bow is just something special. And that's definitely my favorite.
Yeah, it's definitely more challenging to bow hunt. When I first started hunting, it was my second or third season. I couldn't stand the thought of not being able to get out in the woods when it was legal to hunt with a bow. And so I went and bought a bow so I could hunt for the full season because I just couldn't stand it. I was like, I cannot wait till muzzleloader season. I can't wait till rifle season or gun season, I should say. Sorry. Well, I'm going to hunt with a rifle during gun season. But so, yeah, I wanted to be out in the woods. And as a bow hunter, you get the opportunity to do that. It's a lot of fun. Okay, so any gear that you can't leave home without on your hunts? Belt, perhaps, Craig?
Yes, I would highly suggest wearing a belt if you've lost a little bit of weight and your pants don't fit anymore. I'm trying to think of, I don't know, maybe some of the other guys have an answer for this. Maybe we can come back to me. I got to think about this.
Matt?
Well, I think you mentioned it earlier. The safety harness is so important. So we don't ever leave home without it. Love to see people wearing them.
I like to have, depending on where I'm going, if it's like a new spot or if we're on public, I'm like obsessed with limb loppers. I don't know if y'all have them, but if I sit down at a tree and kind of do a ground blind, and then you can go out and clip your limbs, clear lanes if you're just kind of in a pinch. And that's same for turkey season. I always have them out for turkey season as well. So that's like my go-to aside from the harness and the weapon.
It's like her fidget spinner because we'll sit down and you'll hear it over there squeaking, flipping everything in sight.
It is kind of fun to do.
I would have to say, too.
Oh, go ahead, Reagan.
I'm trying to fix my light. My light's dying over here. It's flat.
I kind of was going to ask you if you had a candle going because it sort of looked like the flicker of a candle over there.
Yeah, I have a candle going over here, but there we go. All right. I would say probably I love my muck boots. It's a great pair of boots when you're hunting in the areas that I hunt. Never had a pair until I came to Oklahoma and I was hiking into a tree stand. Always had to wear like hiking boots. And probably since I bow hunt primarily my rangefinder. If you hunt in different spots, I just like knowing how far it is. It makes it the chances of making a bad shot, or guessing wrong goes drastically down when you have your rangefinder. So always have that on me, and then I'm good to go.
For me, other than the essentials, I think I always like to take my camera. Always definitely have warm clothes and like hand warmers. And also just last season, I discovered those like boot warmers that are like adhesive and you stick them to the bottom of your socks. Those come in handy all the time. I usually keep a towel back in the truck too. And then I feel like my go-to snack out there is usually like Nature Valley granola bars because those stay good even despite how cold it is outside. And then I don't know about y'all too, if this is just me being weird and the radio guy, but there's like certain music that gets me in the mindset for hunting. So I usually try to listen to that before we go. I don't know if that's the same way with y'all though.
Heck yeah.
Hey, Tanner, here's a little life hack for you. Take
listening.
those toe warmers and take 2 of them and put it on the same one on the bottom and one on top. Sandwich your foot in between, and you're
that is genius, because apparently, if I'm standing in water throughout the hunt, then that makes it so I get cold so much easier. I'm gonna have to remember that.
Yeah. Do you have insulated? I'm assuming your waders are like super insulated.
Yes, for sure. Yes, and then I also have them big enough so that I can layer up underneath them too.
We've gotten a couple of viewer questions too, and I think they're more directed to you, talking about if you're disabled, can you get a license, and how are you able to hunt if you are somebody with some special challenges?
Well, that's not how I read that question. But yeah, if you're disabled, you absolutely can get a license. There's a lot of our public lands have non-ambulatory areas, so you can get a non-ambulatory permit where you can ride an ATV or UTV. It just has a weight restriction. I believe it's 1,250 pounds, just so you're not out there getting stuck, romping around in a big four-wheel drive. But you can get those permits through our Oklahoma City office and go hunt on these non-ambulatory areas. The ones at Keystone, I know we have a combination lock, so you call us before you go hunt. I'll give you the combination. You go hunt out there. Is that public land or private land? We also have controlled hunts that you can put in for in the spring. A lot of those are for people with non-ambulatory permits. So our dog doesn't like us sitting together. Yeah, you can put in for controlled hunts for folks with non-ambulatory permits, and those are great opportunities. A lot of those are kind of hunting in areas that most folks don't get to hunt. So I'd encourage you to put in for those.
Okay, sorry, I was having to take care of the dog situation over here. We're running out of time here, I think. Is there anything else that you guys want to share with the viewers about hunting? I agree with everything Craig has said. It's really just about being together and getting to share those stories and the memories you have from hunting. It's like I can remember every single hunt like it happened just a few moments ago, but like our dinner from last week, I couldn't even begin to recollect that.
I wanted to mention real quick, going back to when we were talking about advice for younger hunters. Obviously, safety is number one, and once you've got all that down, right under that, I think most important is be patient and don't give up. Because, I mean, I'll be the first to admit I've missed way more times. And I think I went probably 4 or 5 times before I got my first duck, as far as duck hunting goes. So don't give up and don't expect, if you go the first time and you harvest something, great. But don't give up and don't be discouraged if you don't.
I think
that's I felt like you were just speaking to me, Tanner, because I've had a rough season. So,
I tell myself that all the time.
I think for me, it's just to enjoy the experience and just like have fun with it. Like, I think honestly, one of my favorite points of the whole hunting process is like that night before when you're going hunting the next day. Like tomorrow I have work off, so I know I'm going hunting tomorrow morning. The anticipation of being in a tree stand tomorrow morning and waking up and making coffee and putting your camo on and driving out there and playing the music that you want to listen to get you in the zone, like Tanner said. That's what I do every time I go hunting. But, and when you're sitting out there, just like take it all in. I mean, there's no one around you. You can, last year I saw a couple bobcats and, coyotes out there or hogs, all the wildlife. It's just fun to be able to look around and just see, what's going on in the woods. And like, honestly, half the time I forget I even have a job, and I, put that work phone away and just focus on hunting. And it clears the mind. And even if you don't get anything, it's just a fun experience. And then coming back to camp and sharing your stories and the big buck you saw or getting one, and then getting to share that experience of skinning it and processing your deer and then eating it.
Yeah, it's always fun to get back to the newsroom and hear what different story. Of course, right now we don't get to see each other very often, but I love to hear the stories from Reagan, Tanner, Craig. Your stories, they never let me down. They make you let me down a little bit.
I mean, we're given the false impression that like I've never shot a deer. No,
Even your good deer stories sometimes have like they're entertaining to hear.
Of course, because I'll do something, hurt myself, or something will happen. But echo what those guys said as well. I've learned and that I enjoy the experience whether I see a deer or not. I've learned to just watch the squirrels and watch the bobcats. And, the last time, Tess, you mentioned earlier, there's a big fat raccoon that climbed in the tree stand with me. And then I saw about 16, 18 turkey out in the woods, and it was fun just watching them. And it's just being outside, being from the bustle. And to be quite honest with you, 2020 has been a great year to get out in the woods and just be impressed just a little bit. I think all of us probably, even whether you're a hunter or not, get outside, get in the woods, but yeah, I think my advice for people is what those guys, don't give up, wait. I sat out there for about 4 years before I even had a chance on a deer. And funny, the first deer I ever killed was one of the biggest deer I've ever shot. I don't know if it's the biggest, but it was close. And so, but, up to that point, I went, 4 or 5 years without even getting a shot off.
Well, I know
man, I'm the worst hunter out in the woods ever. I'm the oddball brother-in-law, I don't know. And just be patient, just be patient and enjoy the experience for what experience offers. If you see a deer, that's a bonus,
I kind of feel like all of us have had that moment where we're like, I'm the worst hunter in the world. Why am I even doing this?
At least 4 or 5 times a season, I say that.
and honestly, if you haven't been there, I feel like you maybe haven't been hunting long enough, because it's everybody. Everybody who hunts has that experience, I think. Well, I appreciate Craig, Tanner, Reagan, Matt, you guys for being here. And it's been really fun to share stories with you. Oh, I'm sorry. Matt wants to answer another question. We're running out of time, but we did have one viewer question here. It was from a guy who wanted to know about youth season and if his son would be able to sit with him with a youth hunting license. So
yeah, the way I think I'm understanding that question, if you have an unfilled youth deer gun license, you can still use that during the regular deer gun season. And that was from Chris.
Yeah.
If that doesn't answer your question, look me up on our website. I'll be happy to answer it more clearly.
Yeah. And we're all available on Facebook. You can always send us a message on Facebook if any one of us, if you have questions or kind of want pointed in some direction with hunting, we'd be happy to help you. And we certainly hope you have a safe and successful rest of the season. Love sharing your stories, so you can send them to any of us. It's a lot of fun to do. And we just appreciate y'all being here with us. Good luck Saturday morning, opening day of deer gun season. Bye, everybody.
See ya.